Now, I'm not a doomer. I'm actually pretty stoked for this game and Battlefield 6 upcoming, but there's been a concerning report today, not dealing with this game, but instead the franchise as a whole. Something that, especially for the longtime Battlefield fans, is probably something you don't want to hear, deal with, or perhaps even relive, depending on the quality of your memories or by comparison to other franchises out there. Today, we're taking a look at apparently what are the plans to annualize the Battlefield franchise in the future and dissecting it down a bit further. So drop your thoughts, drop a like if you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to subscribe to stay up to date with all things Battlefield 6, Battlefield, and even more FPS content here on the channel. I'd love to have in the community as we talk and share plenty of games out there. But anyways, let's get into it. So this report ended up coming from industry analyst Michael Pachter, where he claimed Byron Beatty shared his plans for the franchise in the future, stating, their goal is 3 studios making Battlefield on a 3-year basis, so they can get Battlefield annually. It's going to take 5 or 6 years before they get 2 in a row, so we're not going to get there for a while, but that's their plan. So to reiterate, this isn't something we have to deal with right now. It's not the immediate future, but it is something that apparently in the nearish future, 5 to 6 years down the road, we might be seeing this start to take shape. And naturally, this is something that has sparked a lot of discussion, spooked a lot of players, and is something that is just generally not super favorable among the Battlefield franchise, and I tend to agree. Now, why is this problematic? Well, first we have to understand, I guess, the perspective of what they're trying to shape with this. In theory, and I do have to clarify, I'm speaking from the perspective of a business, not me personally, that sounds great. Annualizing things, bringing on more workforce, bringing on more talent, bringing in more ideas. This, again, from a business perspective. You'd always have a product in the face of the consumer. You'd always have people talking about it, always bring in money. And if the model is Call of Duty, even when people fully hate it, and they've done that quite a bit the last couple of years, it's bringing in tons of money, like billions of dollars. So one could think, okay, cool, 3 years of dev time each, that's more than enough to bake a full game to be something that is solid for each of those annualized years. And theoretically, without a third mode like a Zombies or a Spec Ops, by comparison to Call of Duty to focus on, a multiplayer and a campaign should be, again, in theory, much more doable in that span of time. You don't have as much on the plate to cook, you can end up taking more time to properly bake those other items there. But the problem comes down to reality. That is a clear, cookie cutter, and very clean way of approaching the entire situation. But game dev is incredibly messy, as is the nature of AAA publishing. Red tape, developmental snags, legal hurdles, market forecasting. I mean, again, if you're just using COD as an example, they've had all of those things and more happen to it. So if you then bring that over to the Battlefield franchise, well, you're not escaping it there either at that point. But I think the most valid concern is quality over quantity. One thing with annualized games is their quality control. You've always got the moving parts that something is going to go wrong, and it's always at the expense of the player. Especially in recent years, again, with Call of Duty as a direct comparison, there's not many other annualized games in the FPS space, so we're probably going to keep coming back to that. How many issues do you see year in and year out with whatever game it is that year? Some things, I mean, still are carried over across games even. And I feel like with annualized releases, you almost have to adapt a develop-as-you-go model just because you're always crunched, always on the clock, and that's always something that leads to something needing fixed at any point. Another thing that's not so great about annual releases is that it's just easy to write off concerns and critiques, offering no long-lasting or rather even immediate response and fixes to issues that may be present, and instead be like, okay, we'll fix that in the next one, when that next game could be 9 months plus away still. Now, it's not the best example, but it's probably the most relevant example, is Battlefield 2042. That game launched horribly, but given years of the progress, updates made to it, I think it's objective that that game is worlds better than what it launched as. So you'd have a situation where that wouldn't happen again if there was annual releases. There wouldn't be that constant push to make it worth playing over time. Not to mention the sort of feel of an obsolete feeling to games year over year. I think it's very valid to feel like it devalues a bit of that time and money you put into buying the game, or perhaps supporting it post-launch as well. But then you also deal with burnout and fatigue. I think that's incredibly real, and I think, again, with COD, you see that there especially. That in and of itself is interesting because, like, before the Warzone cycle, and more specifically now with the Warzone 2 era, we'd see fatigue, I feel like, on a sort of every 2 to 4 year cycle. I remember calls all the way back to Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3 being on forum boards and people complaining that the games were copy and paste. But towards Ghost, that's when it, I think, got really bad back then. Nothing compared to now, and it's hilarious to even look back at forum posts around the time of Black Ops 2, complaining about stuff in the manner that it happened, but it did happen. Infinite Warfare was that peak of the EXO and advanced movement fatigue where people were just tired, and that's why we went back to World War II. Going to space also didn't help at all with the public perception. Modern Warfare to Vanguard, you had calls of a copy and paste, then it was just a reskin in World War II for Vanguard in particular. Now, of course, you see general fatigue because the past few years on a unified engine have all felt and mechanically played incredibly similar. IW Engine, TAC Sprint, Warzone Focus, you name it. I'm not speaking to the quality of the games, but in terms of, again, coming back to that cycle of interest level pre-launch, that's been something that the last decade, there's only been a few games people I think were like excited for. Black Ops 3 and 4, Modern Warfare 2019, Modern Warfare 2, and somewhat to an extent of Black Ops 6, just because it was kind of like, oh, finally we're not getting another Modern Warfare game. And again, not speaking to the quality of those games, but instead solely to the hype factor and general excitement leading up to the reveals and launches. You don't get that annually, even though you're selling them annually. So to now opt into that for potentially the future of Battlefield is a little concerning. I think that especially with the Battlefield community, this will cause a ton of burnout and a ton of sort of just glossing over each title type of thing. Now, I do think that there's a best of both worlds potential. Like, I do think that if you somehow did one every 2 to 3 years, you still have other development to bring on, other ideas, other talent that you can then maximize, but you also don't rush and crunch as much in development to meet an annualized deadline. You don't have as much fatigue and burnout from both the fan and developer perspective. From a dev studio perspective, you can have two main studios that will say turning out a game every 2 years, meaning that the dev time is upwards of 4 years on a single project because you're alternating at that point, keeping in mind that most of, if not all of, post-launch is mapped out by the launch of a game, with at least the development being completed for the first few projects as well for post-launch by that point. So you go from 3 years of dev time to 4 while not needing to overextend in hiring and bringing on teams while giving the already existing teams time to cook. And then from a player perspective, you get that sort of sense of, oh, finally something new's coming out, but also enough to keep you busy in between. But here's the thing. End of the day, this also may just be wrong or presented in a misunderstood way. I don't want this to sound like a hit piece because it's not meant to be that at all, but to examine all sides involved and where this even came from, frankly, Michael Pachter has gotten a lot of things wrong in the past. I mean, in the past, he said the 360 and PS3 era of consoles was going to be the last of console gaming ever. He missed the GTA 5 launch prediction by 3 years. He said the PS Vita would outsell the 3DS. The 3DS actually outsold the PS Vita by around 60 million units. He said the Xbox One would outsell the PS4, where, again, opposite of that, the PS4 has outsold the One nearly by 60 million units to date, among other things. So this could just be another inaccurate prediction. But I think the more important thing about this prediction comes from an industry side of things here. He's an industry analyst, meaning that he's in tune with EA and their predictions, their numbers. So while predictions like this can be wrong, from an industry side of things that has unfortunately turned more and more and just about now only caring about margins and profits for games, an annualized release schedule in the future when mimicking and even having Call of Duty's old VP and general manager of the brand, it makes sense to take what has financially worked for them and logically assume an application will be shared with the Battlefield IP. So while it could be wrong, that's not an out-of-this-world prediction. Like, that's not some groundbreaking thing. Oh, Company A has had massive success. Company B wants to have massive success. So it's not like it's trade secrets or anything like that. It'd be like seeing a friend working a job they're enjoying, making more money, and then you apply to work with them to have that same experience and same wage. Personally, I just think annualized releases, I mean, they've tried it before. That's how we eventually got to Hardline. And again, in the industry itself, that's how we get something that is a product with such turnover as Call of Duty, where I think culturally it's healthier to not have annualized releases. But I guess until that happens, all we can do is voice our concerns. But if it's the will of EA to make more and more money, we've seen it countless times with EA. Any feedback to plead otherwise may just be steamrolled out of the way. So I guess fingers crossed this isn't what ends up happening, but we also have little to no control. So for the time being, I'm going to enjoy playing Battlefield 6. Hope launch nails a lot of stuff down and we can go from there. I'd say I'll cross that bridge when we get there, but it's more of like hoping we can find a detour to avoid that bridge entirely in the future. But for now, that's where we're going to wrap it up. That's been the report as of today that you probably heard about, or if you didn't, you probably want to hear about. So let me know your thoughts down below. Do you think this would be ultimately a good or bad idea for Battlefield? I kind of feel like I know how these comments are going to go, but feel free to drop your thoughts. Feel free to elaborate any other thoughts you may have on the situation. But for now, that's going to wrap it up. Drop a like if you guys enjoyed the video, and make sure to subscribe to stay updated with all things Battlefield 6 as we gear up for launch and even more FPS content here in the future. We do have Black Ops 7 reveals happening as of this week, so a lot of stuff to touch on here, and then Arc Raiders in the near future as well that I'm very excited to bring you guys on the channel. But for now, thanks so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care, and peace.